everybody. This is the Winning in Winnipeg podcast, where I talk to top performing business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and local Winnipeg celebrities. I get to learn who they are and how they think, and I get to hear their perspective about what's really going on in Winnipeg and in their businesses. Today, I'm honored to be able to speak with Master Jay Park of the TRP Academy here in Winnipeg. Tae Ryong Park Academy is one of the country's leading Taekwondo and Hapkido academies. It has not only helped produce an Olympian daughter and coach, but has also trained thousands of students since opening its doors in 1993. I first met Master Park while my son was attending the academy, and I was instantly blown away by their level of service to their craft and students, but also to their business model and the incredible needs that they are fulfilling. There's a lot that I personally want to dive into, so follow us as we dive into what has made TRP Academy and Master Jay Park successful. Jay, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Very nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I appreciate you coming on. So, like I said in the intro, we first met at your academy. My son EMMETT was registered and in it, and I was absolutely blown away. So not only by what you guys are doing there, but there was a lot of stuff going on at the time. Yes. So I'd like to dive into quite a bit of it. But first, let's try get some context about you and your journey and, things that have shaped you. So, you were born in Korea.
Yes.
Right? You came here at 7?
Yes, almost 8.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about that. What do you remember about it?
You know what? Our immigration story is very interesting. When I look back on it, I was almost 8 when we left Daegu, South Korea to come. The story is that my parents tried, or my father, he taught the U.S. military in Korea Taekwondo. So he had a lot of GI friends, and one of his best friends was living in Seattle. Okay. And living abroad, you don't realize how big Canada and the U.S. is, right? I mean, especially in the 70s.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to move to the U.S. for 10 years, and he got denied. And one day they contacted him and said, okay, you're going to Canada. And, Canada wasn't very popular across the world at that time. So showed him on a map and said, where's Canada? They said, right up here. And he looked down and said, okay, there's the U.S. And so, we'll go.
Straight to Winnipeg? Or?
Straight to Winnipeg. He didn't have a job.
Okay.
Didn't know a single person here. Didn't have a house to stay in. Nothing was arranged. And at that time, you can only leave with, I think, $6,000.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Leave the country. And we had 2 huge immigration bags, 4 young kids. I'm the youngest out of 4. And didn't know a lick of English except stay a little longer, which my aunt taught me. I don't know how she learned. And ice cream. Yes.
Okay.
So it was, when I'm 7, 8 years old, all I need is my parents.
Yeah.
Right. And I had my 3 older sisters. So we came to Canada, and I was with my family. That's all I needed. Yeah. But looking back at it as an adult, I'm just like, my dad was ballsy. It's crazy.
Yes.
Living in a country where we speak English, and as I travel the world, you find how easy it is to travel the world, especially now when you know English.
Yep.
And it's almost like you expect everybody in the world, no matter where you go, how come you don't know English?
Yeah.
Right? It's a very self-centered attitude, right? But I'm aware of that, but some people I travel with are just like, yeah, you're in France. They're not supposed to speak English.
That's right.
But I remember when we landed in Winnipeg at the airport, we went to immigration, and all I remember is this woman going, that's what sticks in my mind.
Yeah.
Just because, again, that's how she was actually speaking with some people, and and it's unfamiliar, obviously, the language plus the mannerisms.
Yeah.
And so that seemed like forever just sitting in that in the room. And then they sent us to the restaurant, and all we knew was ice cream. So all we ordered was ice cream. It was delicious, but all we ordered was ice cream. Yeah. And and we met. Yeah, they called.
It wasn't the middle of winter, was it?
It was actually April.
Okay.
And it was cold. Yes. And I got a story about that as well too with my father. But they called the president of the Korean Association, and the Korean community was less than 1,000 people at that time.
Okay.
And that was a blessing. I mean, he took us into his home. He had 2 young children. The boy was a year younger than me.
Yeah.
And yeah, they took us in. We stayed there for about a week or so. And then he said, hey, I got a house. And so you guys can stay there. And that was in Atkinson, Maine. A little pink house with white picket fence. Yeah, my parents worked hard, working in a sewing factory, just like a lot of the immigrants at that time, trying to make ends meet. And here we are. I mean, it's an incredible story. Not my journey so much, but the journey that my parents took and what they did when they arrived here, because they had a good life in Korea, but they wanted to come to the United States, not Canada. That was a blessing in disguise.
Yes.
And they just were looking for a better life for their children.
Right.
And I think they found it.
Okay. So you came, almost 8 years old. You guys are brand new here. How was school? How was that growing up?
Actually, you know what? It was an easy transition.
Okay.
We learned English very quickly. I mean, I think within a year, I was almost fully fluent.
Crazy.
And it was because at that time, nobody kind of coddled you. It was, I met a friend through Taekwondo. I started Taekwondo right away when I actually came here, continued. Okay. I got my black belt in Korea. Okay. And one of the black belts that took it at the same school that I attended, he was 2 years older than me. His name is Steven. And he just treated me like a little brother, never let me get away with anything. Then, it's just, he helped me so much. It's incredible. I mean, we're fortunate to have met the people that we had. Even my father, I mean, I think within a year, he was able to buy a brand new station wagon, with the wood trims on the side.
Oh, yes.
I mean, and without any money, without any collateral, the bank manager trusted my parents to say, hey, you know what, I'll lend you money. And, meeting people like that has really kind of obviously helped them to get a leg up and to work hard. And, it's an immigration success story.
So I read you'd mentioned black belt. That was very young. At 6, you got your black belt in Taekwondo.
Yes.
How do you get a black belt at 6 years old?
You know what? I think they just gave it to me. No.
I found it.
I don't really remember my training. I don't remember much about Korea at all. I mean, little snippets here and there, but I have some pictures at home, so it does prove that I went up different belts. But it was a different mentality. I trained, a couple hours a day, 6 days a week type thing. So that was the culture back then. And I was young even from a Korean standard. Yeah. Yes.
So take me through your teen years, even after high school. Did you work throughout? Did you work at an academy? Did you work at jobs? Did you you have any entrepreneurial blood in you that was kind of pushing you to do something else?
I think perhaps it's in my blood. I mean, apparently we were pretty rich in Korea with my late grandfather, whom I never met, but we had a lot of property in downtown Daegu, which got kind of wasted away with frivolous spending and everything else from my uncle. And and again, that's a blessing in disguise. I think it would be worth billions at this particular moment if we kept it. I mean, property is huge, right?
Crazy.
Yes, we own like horse stables and racetracks and movie theaters and everything else, and that's pretty much what my father left for a better life in Canada.
Unbelievable.
Yes. So it's. I grew up in a rougher area in Elmwood, and I didn't know better. I mean, that's what we did. When you're immersed in that culture or in that environment, that's what you did. And look back at it, I had a great time. I mean, with my friends, and I met one of my best friends later on. Actually, when the movie Bloodsport came out, I went with some of my Hapkido students to watch. And there's a group of bikers actually sitting in front of us. And I guess one of my students hit the chair, and they had a little bit of back and forth, and it was escalating. And these guys were big guys, and so were my students, but still. Yeah. So they stood up, I stood up, and we all stood up. And then I'm just like, oh no, I'm like mid-late 20s. And all of a sudden they turn around, this big burly looking guy with hair down, towards his back, and just like, a guy you'd never want to meet. Turns at me and he goes, and right now my name, I used the name Jay, but my Korean name is Jae Hong.
Okay.
So they used to anglicize it and say Jae Hong. And that's what he knew me as. So he turns around, he recognizes me, we look at each other, it's like, Jae Hong. I'm like, Curry. All of a sudden we start hugging each other. I haven't seen him in like 20 odd years.
Yeah.
And you should have seen the looks on these guys' faces.
Oh, that de-escalated things quickly, I imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We sat down and watched the movie. But so I grew up in that type of a neighborhood. When I was in grade 8, we moved to St. Vital.
Yeah.
And it was like moving to the different side of the tracks. It was a different, different way of living. Everybody looks so rich and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank my parents for working hard to give us a better opportunity.
Yep.
And I lived in South St. Vital all my life, pretty much, except when we moved to Vancouver for 2 weeks. Packed up everything, moved there. Parents said don't like it. We moved back.
Really?
New Hall and everything. It was And then I lived in Calgary for a year.
Interesting.
So, yes.
Okay. Any jobs outside of?
Yes. My very first job was delivering papers, the Winnipeg Tribune. And after about 2.5 months, the Winnipeg Tribune basically folded. It shut down.
Okay.
So what I did was I kept all of the last editions of the Winnipeg Tribune because someone told me that that's going to be worth a lot of money. So maybe that's where my entrepreneurial blood kind of started boiling a little bit.
And that guy was so right.
And I don't know where they are now.
Right. Okay.
I don't think they were worth what I thought they might have been.
Yep. That's fair.
So I did that. When I was in Calgary, when I was 18, I actually got a job at a mass marketing firm. Phone calls.
Yep.
Lasted 2 days, and I said, I can't do this. I can't stand the rejection.
Yep.
So I applied at another place where inventory company. So basically, Mac stores, 7-Elevens, Toys R Us. Mm-hmm. So we'd go in there and we'd take inventory. And at that time, computers weren't really a thing. Yep. So we had these little hip computers where you type, the numbers in, SKU numbers. And
yes.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. And then they made me a manager because they knew I was coming back to Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. So I did that for about a year. And then I said, no, I can't do this anymore either. Mm-hmm. And then got into vending machines. Yes.
Fantastic.
A friend of mine said, hey, you know what? We got this great idea, pizza vending machine. I know, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's a vending machine. They had little pre-made pizzas, Chicago-style pizzas.
Yeah.
Yes, and every location, we serviced 3 locations and had a microwave. And so they take it out and put it in the microwave. And that didn't last long either. so I said to my friend, I haven't seen any. Yeah, so I said to my friend, I said, hey, you know what? Just you go with it. I'm done. Yeah. And then we converted one machine actually into an ice cream machine. So we actually had it in Bonnevital Pool.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, and kids kept unplugging it. So we'd lose a ton of money.
So there's just ice cream all over the ground.
Everywhere.
Oh,
so so that was my kind of foray into trying to get into a little bit business like that. But aside from that, I you know what, I wasn't. I worked at Safeway for several years.
Okay. Yeah.
But I didn't do too much. My father was always, hey, you know what, we weren't well off, but he was like, just go to school, do what you have to do when you're young, and make the mistakes now, and fail, because you don't have kids, you're not married, you can always come back home. But I never left home until I got married. So and that was a huge safety blanket for me, for my parents to say, hey, do what you need to do, work hard, but don't worry about failing, because we're here to pick you up. Yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. So a lot of people will tell me that they have this like aha moment, either when opening a business or getting the idea. But TRP was originally, from what I understand, supposed to be a temporary thing. Your dad and you opened it. Tell me about that, and when was the moment that it actually felt like it was going to be a success?
All right. First of all, hasn't come yet. It was supposed to be temporary. Like a good Korean son. My mother wanted me to be a doctor.
Okay.
My father wanted me to be an engineer. And because I could argue well since I was young, I wanted to be a lawyer. And I watched LA Law. So, it was kind of cool.
Yep.
And so basically I said, okay, I want to be a lawyer. I did debating at school and things like that. And then, went to university, got my degree in criminology, went to, wrote my LSAT. And at that time, my friends were bugging me because Taekwondo wasn't my main sport growing up. That was something I just did as a part of my life.
Really?
And
okay.
yes. But I speed skated for almost 10 years of my life competitively.
Beautiful.
Yes. So my friends were like, hey, you know what? Teach me Taekwondo and Hapkido. And I'm like, no, well. So I used to dabble a little bit in the basement and things like that with my friends. And I guess, I don't know. I must have bugged my dad enough time. And he said, okay, well, let's sign a lease for a year. Okay. And let's do this. Thinking that it's going to fail because most martial arts schools do, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, but he still kept his job. He still worked. I mean, and yeah, we never looked back. It was it's funny because when people look at us now, my father was in the martial arts all his life, myself and my kids, and my nieces, nephews, sister. They think that maybe the school was something we had for generations, but it isn't. Yeah. It's something that kind of fell into our lap. Right. That we never planned on having it as a career. And my mom was against it. She's like, no, you can't do this. You got to learn how to play piano really well and you got to be a doctor. And I'm like, Mom, no. And, after about 10, 15 years, she's like, you made the right choice.
Well, at least there was a time in your life when you actually got to hear that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, she was always supportive, but when it came to that, I mean, it wasn't, and it still isn't your traditional, Asian parents, what they brag about, which is, being a doctor, lawyer, engineer, whatever it may be type thing. Yep. But yeah, I kind of fought that stereotype ever since I was young. I don't know why. But I'm glad I did. Looking at my life now, I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's dive into TRP. So what's the makeup of it? How many how many employees do you have? How many students is there generally at one time?
Yeah. Obviously the pandemic had affected us.
Oh yes.
Yes. I think we did a great job of actually pivoting straight to online within a week of being shut down.
I think that's
yes.
And you weren't doing that before.
We weren't doing it. We were always against it. People have said, hey, you know what, we're moving away. You guys should do like a video type, and I'm just like, no, that you can't do that. I mean, we had talked earlier about podcasts as well too. Yeah. I mean, face-to-face is always better than through
100%,
through video or Zoom. Yeah. And especially with the martial arts, it's more so just because you're teaching techniques, working with children, the interaction is very important.
Yeah.
And, but we had to, I mean, we had no choice. I didn't even know what Zoom was at that time. Yeah. I'm pretty computer savvy, but still. So within a week, boom, we made up a schedule. We provided our not only our students but their families a lot of options in terms of like, energized sessions during the day. A couple times just to get people moving and not sitting at home watching TV. And then we ran classes and relaxation classes right before the bed. So it kept us busy and it kept us, I think, very sane as well. Amazing. And it kept us connected with our Taekwondo family.
That's right.
So that was very important. But right now, I think we are, again, feel very blessed that we are back to pre-pandemic numbers, which is great. And obviously we thank all of our students who supported us during the whole time. There were many people who really were there supporting us, saying, hey, you know what, I know you guys are going to go through a hard time. We're there for you, which was great. And we're probably sitting at about 450 students. Wow. And our after school program, we have a waiting list now, which we've never had before. So it's I think everybody's just ready to get back to normal. I think that's the biggest thing.
So I think I probably underplayed it by saying only thousands that have gone through there. There's probably tens of thousands.
There's tens of thousands.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
That's unbelievable. So you're back to the number. Are you still doing any online? Did you keep any of that stuff? Did you just completely transition out of it?
Yeah, we're just doing physical classes right now, in-person classes, but we did keep our online for as long as we could. There's still some people even earlier this year kind of still hesitant about again it's just take some people a little bit longer. But eventually we just had to cut the umbilical cord and say, hey, you know what,
we're back.
We're back. That's it. Yes.
Wow.
And I would say 99% of the people that stayed online actually came back too.
Amazing.
Yes. So it was nice. I think when you gave them no options, they just said, hey, you know what, we just gotta do it.
That's right.
Yes.
One of the greatest things that I've seen, it stuck out, and I knew about your school before I even knew that I knew about your school.
Okay.
So your bus.
Oh yes.
So I think it's a logoed bus. It has it's hard to miss a bus. But also with it, you're picking kids up after school. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So you're not only reducing the friction between parents getting it there, but you're also filling that childcare need post school. That to me is phenomenal, right? Convenience to the client or to the customer is just unbelievable. And so when I saw that, I was just thinking like, that is probably one of the smartest things any school could do.
Right.
I'm wondering, where did it come from? How did you first implement it? And really, how has that grown?
Well, I mean, that credit has to go to my wife. She's the black belt instructor at the academy as well too. And when was it? 1998. I got an invitation from one of the masters out in San Francisco saying, I'm running a seminar, you should come.
Yeah.
And I don't really like those seminars because, the Canadian and American mentality, especially back then, was a little bit different. We're a little bit more similar now.
In what way?
In the sense that, the US, especially through sports and martial arts, are like, let's go, come on, we got to win, get the gold. Whereas Canadians were like a little bit nicer, oh yeah, we're going to do our best and hopefully get on the podium.
Right. Yeah.
But along with that, when they do marketing and stuff, it was, I will say the word, it was a little bit hokier than what Canadian people will accept.
Okay. Yeah,
right?
That's fair.
Yes. Even belt wise, they have purple belts. I do here too, but camouflage belts, pink belts. I mean, whatever sells is what they did.
Yeah.
Whereas Canadians are like, nah, we can't do that.
The camel belt is fantastic.
Well,
Sticking to the true heart of the sport.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so my wife is like, I've never been to San Francisco. She loves to travel. So she says, let's go. So we went to the seminar, 3-day seminar. And in Florida, I mean, they don't have winter, so it's a lot easier to run an after-school program. And this gentleman had a lot of success. I mean, 150 after-school program kids. So we brought it back, all the information from the seminar, and my wife said, we should do this. I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. You got to invest in a van.
A
lot of work.
Yeah.
And what if it doesn't work? Then what are we going to do with the vans? And she's like, let's do this.
Yeah.
So my father, especially, when my wife says, hey, to me, let's get this or let's do something, he supports her 100%. So he's like,
thanks, Dad.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, actually, thank you. Yes. Yeah. And he's like, do you want to do it? She's like, yes, I think it's a good idea. It's like, do it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it just took off. I mean, it's a lot of hard work to set up, and the logistics is very difficult. I mean, you can't not pick up the kids. The parents rely on us.
Yep.
So that's very difficult sometimes.
Insurance
plus like the, minus 35.
Yep.
So we were known from the schools for always being there, regardless of even when the school buses don't run because it's cold, we are there. So we haven't missed a day. So I think that's part of our claim to fame with the schools.
I think there should be T-shirts.
So it took off. We were offering a before school program now as well for parents who have to go to work earlier.
Oh yeah.
And so it's been awesome. It's great.
Is there a catchment area, or do you only go so far?
Yes. When we first started, obviously we were trying to get a good customer base, so we weren't just doing the Pembina Trail school division. We were going down Bishop Grandin into Louis Riel school division, and and everything else. But it just became a little bit too difficult as traffic got busier down Bishop Grandin and elsewhere. So right now we're doing a lot of the schools. I think there's 15 schools in the Pembina Trail School Division that we service. We have 2 buses and 1 van that operate.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So where do most of your students come from? Like, do you know how they hear about you? Is it word of mouth? Do you guys do you market? How do they contact you?
When we had the Yellow Pages, we did spend a lot of money on the Yellow Pages.
Okay.
Because that was the only means
that
at that
was what
time
you did. Yeah.
Yes. But after the Yellow Pages disappeared, we got to a point where word of mouth was probably our main. We tried some other community newspapers and other dabbled in other things, but I don't know. Obviously, we did get some students, but right now we do no other advertising except obviously upkeep our website and stuff.
Yep.
But I think it's just we've gotten to a point where word of mouth has been very important, and that's what we rely on. And
that's how we found you guys.
Okay.
I called up a buddy and said, "Hey, you have kids that did this. Where do I go?" And he was like, "TRP."
Oh.
I was like, "Oh, did you look at any other schools?" He's like, "No. Go there. It's amazing." Okay.
Well, you have to thank him for us.
I will. He's actually been on the podcast as well.
Oh.
Have you ever thought of expanding outside of Winnipeg? Has that ever been a...
We did. One of our families, basically, the father was an engineer, and he decided, I don't want to do this anymore. And the whole family were kind of black belts. So we're going to expand out to Calgary. And so we all drove out there and scoped it out. And yeah, we found a location. We're about to sign it. And then they just kind of got cold feet. It's not something that they did or thought about.
Yep.
And so we just kind of backed out of that. But yeah, we were always very careful. Like, they were a great family, and we had trust that they would carry our name properly.
Yep.
So that's why, we decided to do it. But no, a lot of people, that's a common question that I get, because our school is fairly large.
Yeah.
That, do you guys franchise, or do you guys have multiple locations? We had one other location that serviced the Transcona, East Kildonan area. And the pandemic kind of hit us a little bit harder there with high rent and everything else. So we kind of closed down that school just at the end of 2021.
Yeah.
But the name Tae Ryong Park is named after my grandfather, my late grandfather. And so when we decided to open up the school, it made sense that it would be called my father's name, Taekwondo Park Academy or whatever. And my dad's like, no. And this is the type of man he is. He's like, no, put it under your name. I'm like, Dad, I can't put it under my name. It's just, and he's just, no, you got to put it under your name. He goes, I'm only going to be here for a short period. This is what you're carrying on. I'm like, well, no. And then we found out that, or in Korean culture, you don't know your aunt and uncle's names, and you don't know your grandparents' names so much. It was just grandpa, grandma, and aunt and uncle.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's not like here where you go Uncle Tom or Uncle Auntie Jane or somebody like that.
Yeah.
So I said to him, what's grandpa's name? And he says, Tae Ryong Park. I go, what does that mean? Tae means like grand, big, and Ryong is dragon. So it's big dragon. So I'm like, perfect.
That
it can't get any better.
I know, that sounds amazing.
Because Bruce Lee, his name is Soryang, which is small dragon. So I'm just like, Bruce Lee, small dragon, and Grandpa's big dragon. We're going to name it Big Dragon.
Yeah.
So it was, everything kind of fell into place, even the name.
Yeah.
But we were a little bit hesitant. Like, people can't say Tae Ryong Park.
Right.
Like, we should call it something else that catches people.
Yeah.
And then we decided, let's stick with this.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the best things we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys also offer summer camps, winter camps. Winter camps? Is that
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Goes along with my first comment about you're hammering two very, very sought after problems for parents.
Right.
Right. Childcare, and what do we do with kids when they're not in school?
Right.
And so, how long has summer camps been a thing for you guys?
Oh, geez. Summer camps have been going since before our after school program. So, almost, I don't know, 20, 25 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. And, we have lots of fun with the kids. yeah. I mean, especially when I used to run it, I'm not there as much just because we travel so much for competitions.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just the instructors have just as much, or sometimes more. I'm like, settle down, you do your job.
Yeah. Stop having so much fun.
Yeah, and I guess it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But the summer camps, winter camps, in-service days, everything like that. Once you provide a service for parents, especially with the after school,
Yeah.
it's our philosophy that you can't just hang them out to dry and say, well, find your own when there's no school. We wanted to try to provide an all-inclusive type of a service for those parents who rely on us for the after-school program.
Yep.
That they won't have to go elsewhere. Everything's provided through the academy.
Right. What I really like about martial arts, and I've done some martial arts as a large white guy, but what I really like is the discipline, the respect, the mind work that's done in it, but also values. So values are really big in my life. My life changed when I really focused on what I value and running my company that way. So how have you found that's played into your employees? Do you hire outside of any students that come through? How do you hire instructors and anyone that comes to work in your school?
It's 100% in-house. Yes, we hire within our own student body, from students who started from the very beginning as a white belt, grown through our program, achieved their black belt, done leadership programs through our teaching and also from there, obviously, if they're interested in being an instructor of the academy as an employee, then what we do is we go through obviously an instructor's program, mentorship program, and then so it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because I was talking with one of the parents that came in for information. They were asking the same question, and so I had the same answers for them as well too. Is that and it also provides an opportunity and a goal for some of these younger kids to say, hey, I want to be that instructor one day. I want to be an instructor. Well, you can.
Yep.
So it's worked out really well. And that philosophy that you talked about is carried on since they were white belts. So this way, what happens is no matter what type of a business it is, whether it's martial arts or home building or selling tires,
Yep.
I think the culture within your company is very, very important. And the culture has to go from, top down.
Yep.
So if there is one person who is, playing a, mindset is different, playing a slightly different game, then, things can fall apart. So I think that's one of the secrets of our success as well, too, is that all the instructors have that same philosophy. And I think one of the big things, too, is that although they are, I become an employer and they become an employee, that never exists. That only exists on paper. It's always the teacher to student. So no matter whether I'm teaching them Taekwondo or Hapkido, or whether I'm saying, hey, you know what, let's go and sweep the floor, or let's do whatever, teach kids or whatever else it is. It's always that level of respect both ways. That go together. So
that would eliminate a lot of HR issues.
Absolutely.
I imagine, right?
Yeah, we do jokingly have an HR department, but he's the problem all the time.
Yeah, no, totally fair. What is, and this could be a dumb question, how do you go from master to grandmaster?
Well, technically it's by level.
Okay.
Right? So if you're a 7th Dan, you are considered a grandmaster, and master starts at a 4th Dan, right? 4th level black belt. So I reached 7th Dan many years ago, but I don't call myself a grandmaster because my father, right? My father's a grandmaster, not me. So for me, it's always been not about the number on your certificate. It's about if people like my father and people like my father's colleagues don't consider me a master, then I'm not a master. I mean, I don't care what number I have on a certificate.
Right.
So there have been times when obviously I had the privilege of being a fly on the wall with them because of my father. So when we used to travel, places, my father would take me along and make sure that, I learned, and I listened to some of the stories, which are amazing. It's incredible. But sometimes they would refer to somebody who's a 6th or 7th Dan black belt, Mister, and it's on purpose.
Oh,
Yes.
that's like,
and then
that's a bit of a shot.
Yeah, they're saying, you know what, earn your place. I don't care,
Yeah.
how much you paid or what you did or who you paid off.
Yeah.
You got to have, you got to earn our respect.
Right.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Whereas, certain times, even if you're not considered technically a master, they would call you a master, and that's a sign of great respect that you take and go, thank you. So, So I think when, for me, I titles aren't important. It's just, I think, ultimately, we teach to the students all the time, the belt doesn't represent you. You represent the belt.
Right.
Simple.
Yeah. Now you're very, you're very good at speaking. You are clearly good at teaching and communicating stuff. What part? So every business in the world is three things. It's finding leads, closing leads, and fulfilling. So sale or marketing, sales, and fulfillment.
Right.
Where are you strongest, and where have you had to bring in somebody else if you've ever felt that you were weak somewhere?
I think the marketing is the weakest, simply because I'm cheap.
From Winnipeg.
From Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Korean, no.
Well, I'm Ukrainian, so we've got that deep down.
Brothers.
Yeah.
No, I would say the sale, right? I mean, and I'm a little bit hesitant to say the sale, but I can close, and the reason is because I think I say it like it is. I mean, obviously, you have to be diplomatic. You got to be professional when you're when you're speaking to anybody.
Yeah.
But I don't try to beat around the bush. I don't.
I'm not trying to sell you.
No, I don't. I'm not trying to sell you. I'm telling you what the program can offer you or your child or anybody else in your family.
Yeah.
And this is what it is, and this is what we do. So come and watch. And if you're happy with it, great.
Yep.
If you're not happy with it, then obviously we need to learn and do better. So I think that's always been our philosophy.
Yep.
And so I mean, it's. I can't say I came about it naturally because I haven't. It was my father. And again, when you're right there listening to him and he's knocking you on the head, going no, you don't want to hear it. But just I think everybody goes through that point as you get older. You're like, oh, my father was right, or my mother was right, or so and so was right.
Yeah.
And so we've had a lot of those moments where we would sit down and I would literally be arguing with my father. And I can't believe my father allowed me to argue with him as an adult. But still, I think it was his way of teaching me, as opposed to just saying do it.
Right.
Because it would have been easy, and I would have done it.
Yeah.
Begrudgingly, I think. But for him to actually allow me to kind of argue a little bit when it comes to business, not about life, and to kind of, I think, learn with me, but also teach me.
Yeah.
I look back and I'm just like, oh, that's what he was trying to do.
Right.
So.
Well, there's no better learning opportunity than the pain of learning a hard lesson, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you either learn from it or
don't learn and keep making the same mistake.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, you get destroyed.
That's right. Can you think of anything that goes against the norm in we'll say in martial arts academies, maybe it's in martial art, but is there something that you believe that kind of goes against the status quo or the martial arts establishment that has either helped you be successful or that you think may have hurt you in the long run?
You know what? We always had a solid business model. Okay. Because when the academy started becoming a little bit more successful, and my father realized, hey, I think this is going to be for the long haul. He asked me a question, which was important. He said, if you were going to sell a car, what kind of car would you sell? I'm like, of course, Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff. He goes, no, seriously. There's a lot of car dealerships out there. What car would you sell? I thought about it, and I'm just like, and at that time, I said like BMWs, stuff like that. And he's like, okay, so what do you have to do to sell BMWs? Right? So, and he goes, because not everybody wants a BMW. Some people want just Chevettes,
Yep.
Chevrolets, Oldsmobiles. And I'm like, okay, but I don't want to sell those cars. He says, then you need to find out, right, what you need to do to sell BMWs. So that's when I kind of thought, okay, now in the martial arts as well, too, generally the martial arts, doesn't matter what it was generally known as, a junker car, really. The image was it's a small hole in the wall in the basement of a building somewhere or a community center. And that's the image that a lot of people had back then.
Okay.
Now it's different. And that was a hard sell, right? Because when we, and again, I fought against my father, but I'm glad that he was stronger than me in every way. He still is. But when we purchased our building in 95 Squarefield, my dad said, okay, hey, I found this property here. Go call them and set up a meeting. I'm like, well, we can't buy a building. He's like, why not? I said, because I was scared. I'm like, well, no, it's a building.
It's a building.
Yeah, it's a building.
It's not a hole in the wall.
Yeah. He's like, go buy it. I'm like, okay. So I called the gentleman and he's like, oh, what are you going to do with it? I said, oh, a martial arts school. Right away, he shut me down. He's like, it's, this amount. I'm like, yes. He goes, have you thought about, this location, that, and something else? No, I would like this location. Finally, I got him to come down. And we were at Clarence in an industrial park.
Okay.
And he came down. And at that time, and again, our clients are from like White Ridge, Linden Woods and stuff like that. So people are driving up in, Mercedes, BMWs, or any kind of minivans, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes in to watch. And I thought, he probably thought he was a little hole in the wall. And it wasn't very big. It was like 3,500 square feet. But still, it was nicely kept and good. Yeah. He came in. He looked at he told me afterwards, but he came in, he looked at the students. There was about 30 students in that training at that time, parents sitting down. And then he goes, all right, what are you looking at?
Beautiful.
Yes. And then later on he said, you know what, I got to tell you the truth. And that's what he told me. He goes, you know what, I've had bad experiences. And when you called me and said that, because I pull up, I saw the type of cars, the type of clientele you had. He said, you know what, the image was different.
Yeah.
So and we stayed still friends, but still stay. That's when I kind of learned that, hey, you know what my father was telling me about what car are you selling, what dealership do you want to be, was very important in terms of how the image that you present.
Right. So, how do you want your brand to feel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think? So clearly, whenever I ask pros and cons of Winnipeg, a -40 winter and 6 feet of snow, never anyone's ideal winter.
Right.
But when we think of Winnipeg, you've been operating the school, almost 30 years now. What do you think the pros of operating and being based in Winnipeg have been?
As a business, from a business perspective?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any pros specifically with Winnipeg, simply because I think if we were in a bigger market, Toronto or Vancouver or somewhere in the States,
I knew I should have asked cons.
We would have many, many more students.
Right.
Yes. I think that philosophy would carry anywhere. And like you said, that branding, that image that we try to portray. But on a personal level, I love Winnipeg. I mean, my daughter loves Winnipeg too, Skylar. I mean, we travel all over the world, but my wife is like, let's move somewhere warm. And as I get older and older, I'm kind of leaning more towards that. But
what does your dad say?
My dad loves Winnipeg. It's kind of funny because obviously, he grew up in Korea and everything else. But I think within like 5-6 years of being here, he goes, I'm Canadian.
He was sold.
Yeah, well, he's Canadian. And I think, and that's his philosophy as well too. Is that of course he loves Korea and that's his homeland. But since he moved to Canada, he's very loyal, right? He's not only loyal to Korea, but he's also loyal to him. As soon as he became Canadian, he's like, I'm Canadian. Yeah. So if you said let's move back to Korea, he'd say no. Canada's my home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel the same way with Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, as much as we've gone everywhere else, just it's so comfortable here. It's smaller. I mean, you don't have all these, the nightlife maybe perhaps, or the restaurants or anything else. But just every time we come back home from going anywhere else and come back to Winnipeg, yeah, it just feels, just
easy.
Just easy
nice,
and
comfortable.
nice
I get
and
it.
just
Yeah.
comfortable. And it's I guess that's what home is.
Right. Yeah. Do you think about, or did you ever make a point in thinking about work-life balance, about how much you're at the academy or how much mental energy you're doing it to, the actual time that you're, spending with your family? Were they at the club and, that's your family time? How did you go about it?
You know what? That again is a blessing. Again, my wife, basically, I met my wife through the academy. She was a student. Nobody heard that. And
she signed a waiver.
Absolutely. And I don't think she liked me at the very beginning.
That's fair.
Yes. And so I convinced her.
Yeah.
I mean, use my
You
charm.
wore her down over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like to call it charm, but I think
that's fair.
I told her I'm like mold. And she's like, what do you mean? I go, I'll grow on you. And honest to goodness truth, I don't know why I said it, but just and it became what both of us did when our children was born. We had an opportunity actually right before Skylar was born in 1999. Our first to actually move to the States and head up a professional Taekwondo league that they wanted to start. And so my wife and I discussed it. And then when she got pregnant, we're just like, no, let's stay in Winnipeg. We love Winnipeg. And this is a great place to raise a family.
Yeah.
But ever since the kids were young, they were at the academy all the time. My wife was at the academy. We had a little room in the back. So basically, that's where they play. That's where they slept. That's where they ate. I mean, even going to school, we lived in Royal Wood, but the kids went to Van Wellingham School in Linden Meadows, Lindenwood, sorry.
Yep.
Just because, again,
it's right there.
It's right there at work, right?
Yep.
So we drive them to school in the morning. We go to work. We stay there the whole day, work, pick them up as part of our after-school program. And then, we'd all go home at night. 8 o'clock at night.
So you really kind of shaped your entire, everything that was important, kind of right there.
Absolutely. I mean, we spent more time there than we did at home.
Right.
And it's kind of funny because the pandemic did more damage to my house in 2 years. And my kids are good. Like, they don't destroy, like, they're adults now, but still, even when they were younger, because we spent so much time, there's more wear and tear in the 2 years than the 10 years before.
That's funny.
And I can't take it. I'm just looking at that. I was going, why?
I could have sold it new.
I know, right?
Are you a routine guy? No.
My wife is, but not me.
Yeah.
No. I'm just like go with the flow guy, I think.
So what does your day look like?
It depends whether I'm tired or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I mean, because my wife is, if I don't do it, she does it. If she doesn't do it, I do it. It's just, it's
a good business partner.
Great business partner. Great life partner.
Yeah.
I mean, usually end up right now, we wake up in the morning, basically at 8 o'clock, the kids are downstairs. We start our training. And depending on the day, it's conditioning or weights, so it's about an hour and a half of training.
Nice.
And then, after that, go to work, be at the academy. And then they get there at about 1:30, 1:40, do about an hour and a half of training again. And then after that, I rush off to do the after school program pickup.
Yep.
And then the day starts with ends with teaching and ends at about 8:30.
Yeah.
Yes.
When did was it an active decision or was it something that just came? When did you guys start looking at the Olympics as, okay, this is the thing that we're going to start pushing for?
Well, it's kind of funny because my father, when he was younger, he wanted to go to the Olympics as a cyclist. And my grandfather said no.
Yeah.
And so crushed his dreams. So, I mean, my father was very athletic, not only in the martial arts, but he bodybuilt as well, too. He's I think second place in Mr. Daegu and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And he cycled. He's it's amazing. I mean, it makes me sick because I can't keep up still. But and then for me, my goal was to go to the Olympics in speed skating. And I was good at short track, not long track, but at that time, short track wasn't in the Olympics.
What's that? 400 meters?
I know short track is inside the hockey rink.
Oh, okay.
Right? Whereas the long track is the 400-meter track.
Okay.
Like a regular track, right? Okay. So I was a little bit more agile, but my limit was 400 meters. And the shortest race in long track was 500 meters.
Oh.
So that didn't work out well for me because, you hit the proverbial wall at 400, and then I was good until then.
Yeah.
I mean, but the last 100 meters, everybody will just...
Fast twitch fibers.
Yeah. Well, yes. So I gave up speed skating. I thought, then focus on school. Yep. And but just didn't. And then just with the Olympics, I don't know. And then I guess my daughter, because she heard this story, she said, "Hey, you know what? I want to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal one day." So she was a step above my father and myself, because hers wasn't just, "I want to go to the Olympics. I want to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal."
Right.
And so, when she's young, it's cute. Oh, yeah, hey. And we weren't very competitive then at our academy. Yeah. Like, we had some really good competitive kids, but at national level, we did well, but not at an international level. Right. And then, it was never my plan to actually be doing what we're doing now, just like our school in a competitive way. But the kids are succeeding, and they want to do it. So my job is, and my wife's job is to help them to achieve their dreams and goals. Yeah. Yes.
What were your biggest influences in your life? Mentors, places, books?
Well, obviously my father. I mean, that goes without saying. Yep. I mean, to this day, my father. Mentors aside from my father. I mean, I would have to say, like the friend I mentioned earlier, Stephen. When I first came to Canada. Yeah. Just the way he actually treated me. Sometimes I didn't like it, but when I look back at it, I'm just like, I'm very thankful for that. Mm-hmm. And then after, I would say speed skating, just the sport itself, because most of my friends most of them played hockey. Mm-hmm. And there's two of us. Actually, I speed skated, and another one of my friends, Yoan, basically did judo as a sport. He went to the Olympics, and we were different. We're obviously tougher than the hockey guys, right? Fair enough. Yeah, of course. No, but we didn't drink. We go to the bush parties with 6 packs of iced tea. Mm-hmm. We had a different mentality because the way we trained was different, right? And I used to say to my hockey friends all the time, I mean, if you even trained a quarter of what we did,
you'd be amazing.
You'd be amazing. Yeah. But they didn't. Right. It was a different culture.
Yeah.
So I think speed skating and the work ethic and the culture that I learned through speed skating, mm-hmm. and knowing that although I wasn't at that level yet, I stopped before that, but knowing that, hey, you know what? You got to work this hard to achieve even below greatness, which I don't think a lot of my friends that played hockey realized, right? So I think that has helped me to become who I am and to become the coach that I am, mm-hmm. and to help my students, not only my children, but other students to succeed.
Right.
So I look back at that and I think, my experience in speed skating was huge.
What do you wish people knew about your school that you don't think they do?
I think within the last 2, 3, 4 years, we've been out in the public quite a bit, especially with my daughter's success, and now mm-hmm. my sons as well too. That I don't know if there's anything that they don't know. I mean, we're pretty open. Everybody knows that we're a family business. Everybody knows that my father can kick my butt still. It's I don't think there's anything that I can mention that they wouldn't know.
The phrase, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
What is something that you knew you were coming on, What's something that I should have asked you that I haven't?
Oh, geez.
Well, I like it. Then I did a good job.
I know. Absolutely.
Well, I think, one of the biggest things, like I said before, is mindset in martial arts. What would you say to, let's say, to the general 18-year-olds? They're coming out of high school. What is your, number one piece of advice that you would?
I think my number one piece of advice to anybody is use common sense. I think right now society doesn't use common sense so well, and right now there's so many different views, and I growing up, and this has really made me think during the last couple of years. It's really made me think and discuss with a lot of my friends from all across the world, because we use the technology of Zoom to meet and keep ourselves sane.
Mm-hmm.
But you can read a book, but whose perspective are you reading to say, hey, this is the truth?
That's right.
Right? And you can listen to the news, the same thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things out there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just use common sense, I think at least 50% of the things that you don't know, you will know simply because it makes sense, right? So I think if anything, if any advice I can give anybody is, hey, you know what? Trust your instincts, trust your common sense, and listen to the people that have gone through things. Like you said, you don't know what you don't know. Well, if I've never done it, how do I know?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So even through the martial arts as well, too, is that that I've growing up where I did, and growing up how I grew up, I got into a lot of scuffles. Some of them my fault, unfortunately, and I apologize to anybody out there.
Yeah.
But it was just the way we grew up, and I'm glad we grew up like that. So my two boys, like sometimes when they listen to stories of myself and my friends talk, they're just like, "Wow," really? Like almost like the way I did with my father and his colleagues.
Yeah.
But I kind of got to experience some of that.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I think it's almost like we're wrapping everybody up in a bubble.
Yeah.
At school, the kids can't play Red Rover anymore. You can't throw snowballs. You can't play King of the Hill on a snowbank. I mean, you can't even be on a snowbank anymore without somebody yelling at you. Climbing a tree. Hey, you're going to hurt that tree. I mean, they're not worried about the kids or whatever it may be. I'm just like, I don't know. Like our philosophy, I think at the academy, maybe this is it. When you said, is there something that we should know that we don't know? Is we don't coddle the kids at the academy. I mean, we want the kids to get into trouble. We want them to fool around a little bit. It freaks me out when there's kids that never fool around. We had this one student, and I love him to death, Justin. I mean, his family's great, and he never got into trouble. Never, ever once. Just a perfect, and I think he's like, probably to this day, he probably didn't. I had to give him push-ups just on purpose to make up something. But
you're standing too still.
Absolutely, you're too good.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's it. Is that we want kids to be kids. We want them to learn, and you can't learn without failing. You can't learn without making mistakes. Lately there's a lot of things going around about virtue and things like that, and I 100% agree. Is that like you can't be virtuous and say you're peaceful if you've never experienced violence, right? You can't say you're honest if you haven't actually had the urge to steal or something. I don't know. I mean, that's just my thing. Is it's just natural, right? Something that comes natural to you is not something that is virtuous. And I learned that from my father. I did very well in high school, all throughout up until university.
Okay.
And so I, mid 90s, I graduated with. I thought I was the smartest kid around. I'm just like, oh yeah, hey. And so I would come home with 100% tests, and I'll show it to my father. My dad's like, that's not good. I'm like, what do you mean that's not good? It's 100%. He goes, if you did better, they give you 110. I'm like, Dad, 100 is the best. They can't give 110. It's like, just kind of shoo me away. That's it. There's the occasions when I came with lower marks, 70s, 80s, and he's like, good job. I'm just like, okay, maybe I should get 70s and 80s. And I didn't know the lesson then. And So first year university, I got a personal letter from the dean warning me that I'm going to get kicked out of university. Yes. 1.7 GPA, first year university in Calgary.
Wow.
Yes. It was a huge blow to my ego.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to study.
Right.
I had no study habits. Right. So what my father was telling me before is, you know what? Maybe God gave you the gift to be intelligent. And I listened in class. I worked hard, but I never really studied.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, the 100% you got, that wasn't you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me, hey, I'm not going to tell you great job when it wasn't you. I didn't see an effort.
Yeah.
But when I got to 70 or 80, he saw the effort, he saw the disappointment, and he's like, okay, well, that's the best you could do. That's awesome.
Right.
Right? That's good.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't realize it until after the first year of university. I was so humbled by it. I'm just like, how can I be failing? Right? Because every time I pick up a book, I'd fall asleep because I didn't have study habits.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in university, they don't teach you. They just read page 100 to 250.
You're on your own.
You're on your own.
Yep.
Right? And that's what my father was trying to teach me all along, and I never listened to him. Mm-hmm. So it took me a couple of years to really get back and to get my grades back up and get into shape. And and I think that's the same philosophy that I hold when we're teaching as well too at the academy is your best is your best. Your best is good enough for us. And it's the same thing when my children compete as well. Is that sometimes you might see them being scolded by me, and you would think that they lost. They didn't. Like the one time, Skylar I think beat the girl 42-0, and we're walking away, and one of the coach, one of my I guess friends and mentors comes up. He goes, "Hey, coach, how'd you do?" I'm like, she won." He goes, "So then what's the problem?" And he walked away. He saw the match, but he's kind of teaching me, mentoring me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, she didn't do what she was supposed to do to win.
Yep.
Right? She didn't follow the game plan. So that wasn't great. So it's not about winning and losing. It's about going there, doing your best, following the game plan, and that's success. So at the academy, everybody can achieve a black belt, right? If that's your best. So it's not an absolute performance.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past, I've had some arguments with parents like, how come my son failed, but the other kid passed, and my son did better? I'm like, but your son could have done better. They're like, but my son did better than the other child. So my question was, where do we set the standard?
Right.
They're like, wow, but I go, how about we set the standard at when I was actually getting a red belt? Well, that's not fair. I go, why not? Well, because you grew up in this. I said, well, okay, let's talk about fairness, right? If this child is putting in their honest effort and this is the best that they can do,
mm-hmm.
why should they fail? I said, do you truly believe that your son worked hard enough to actually say that this is what he deserved? They're like, well, I'm like, well, isn't that what we're trying to teach your son?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, that's something that I learned from my father because, when we first started, I used to fail everybody at the test. Like I used to fail. And my dad's like, luckily my father made the decision.
Yeah.
It's like, why? I go, because it's not good enough. He goes, who says? Well, it's going to be embarrassing for the academy. He goes, whose academy? I go, this academy. He's like, I'm not embarrassed. So yeah, those were arguments we had quite a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would pass. I wouldn't be happy about it. But again, I mean, that was a 23, 24, 25-year-old stubborn kid who thought that he knew about business and life. And I learned. And I think, thankfully, I hope, hopefully I'm passing that type of a philosophy onto my students and learning. So yeah, if anything, the academy, maybe, people don't know. They might think, oh, hey, everybody has to be like this. No, I mean, everybody, I don't care if you got, 4 left feet and no arms. Doesn't matter. You come to the academy, you put in the effort, you can leave as a black belt one day.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that's one of the philosophies that has made you guys so successful. Not just your students, but also from a business standpoint. You're pushing people to be the best version of themselves, and that's I think that's probably one of the biggest things that has led to your success. Thanks so much for being here. I'm really honored to have you share your story, and I just think that your academy is such a staple now in Winnipeg, and if you can get to a point where just word of mouth is selling your own business for you, it's you're doing something right. Before we end off, now it's not only for kids, right? You have adult classes and
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
yeah. So how would someone go about if they're interested in that? How would they go about that?
Well, I mean, just contact us, right? I mean, TRP Academy. If you Google it or search it up, it's there.
Yeah.
Funny thing about the adults is I get a lot of calls with adults actually wanting to take a class,
Okay.
but they're like, oh, you know what? I'm out of shape. I haven't done anything for 10 years, 20 years, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, but I'm going to come see you when I get in shape.
Yeah.
And I'm just...
Okay, it was nice seeing you. Yeah.
It's a different mindset because, again, kids just walk in and say, hey, ta-da, here I am, and I want to have fun, and I want to be a ninja.
Yeah.
Adults come in, and yeah, it's they have a different perspective of why you do classes. And I always tell them, you know what? Please do not worry. You come here to get in shape. If you're in great shape, we'll get you into better shape.
Yep.
But if you're out of shape, I don't care if you can't even walk up the steps.
Mm-hmm.
Come, practice, learn, train. And it's always about one step more, one step more, one step more.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's out there that says, hey, you know what, I'm out of shape and I want to learn martial arts, just come as you are. That's it. You don't have to be anything,
Yeah.
We'll get you there.
Yeah.
So.
And we'll push you to be the best version of yourself.
Absolutely.
That's phenomenal. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I hope to have you back in 40 years after, but when it's 40 years old. So I expect to be talking in 10 years from now.
Absolutely. No, you know what? It was a pleasure being here and I had a lot of fun. So yes, thank you very much.
Great.